You know, children, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And there's a bigger difference between being scared and knowing in your bones that something is deeply, terribly wrong. I've told you some stories before about the war, about your grandmother, but there are some things I never spoke about, not because I forgot, but because speaking about them feels like inviting them back inside. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about the window. It was 1973. I was 38 years old. Your grandmother and I had just moved into that old farmhouse outside Bowling Green. The place had been empty for years. The realtor said it was because the land was too rocky for farming. But I found out later the land had nothing to do with it. The house was simple. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a bathroom at the end of a long hallway. Your grandmother and I, we fixed it up nice, painted the walls, sanded the floors. After a few months, I knew every creak, every draft, every shadow that fell at certain times of day. The hallway, that was the spine of the house. From the living room, you'd walk straight back. First door on the left was our bedroom. Second door on the left was the spare room we used for storage. On the right side, just a blank wall, then the closet, then the bathroom at the very end. I walked that hallway 100 times a day. Could do it with my eyes shut. Matter of fact, I did do it with my eyes shut plenty of nights, stumbling to the bathroom half asleep. I knew that hallway like I knew the back of my hand, which is why what happened next, it still doesn't make sense. October 16th, 1973, a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday was when the garbage truck came, and I had just taken the trash out to the road. I came back inside, walked through the living room, and turned into the hallway. I was looking down at my boots, thinking about breakfast. Then I looked up, and I stopped breathing. There, on the right wall of that hallway, between the bedroom door and the closet, was a window. Not a small window, a big one, maybe 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Old, dirty glass. A wooden frame, painted white, chipping at the edges. I stood there. I stared, and I felt the blood drain from my face because I absolutely knew, that window had never been there before. The night before, I had walked past that exact spot to use the bathroom at 2 in the morning. No window. The morning before, I had stood right there and tied my shoes. No window. For 6 months, that wall had been solid. Now there was a window. My first thought was that someone had broken in overnight. Build a window? It made no sense. But fear doesn't think straight. I walked toward it, slow, like it might disappear if I moved too fast. The glass was dirty, like it had been there for 50 years. Dust on the sill, cobwebs in the corners. I leaned in, put my face close, and I tried to see what was on the other side. At first, I couldn't make anything out. Just shapes, dark shapes. I thought maybe it was a backyard, but the angles were wrong. The house didn't have any windows on that side. There shouldn't have been a view at all. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw a room, a bedroom, with a bed, a dresser, a chair, and in that chair, sitting perfectly still, facing away from me, was the back of someone's head. I stumbled backward, hit the opposite wall. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself it was a reflection, or a trick of the light, or maybe I was losing my mind. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went outside to check. I ran outside, around the side of the house. I pushed through the tall grass, and I stood right where that window should have been. There was nothing, just the old wooden siding of the farmhouse, painted white, chipping in the same places. No window, no frame, no glass, nothing. I put my hand on that wall, felt the wood. It was solid. I walked the entire perimeter of the house, counted every window. There were 7, same as always. But inside there were 8. I went back in, walked to the hallway. The window was still there, and the person in the chair, they hadn't moved. But now I could see the reflection in the dresser mirror. A woman, old, gray hair, wearing a nightgown, and she was looking right at me. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. Time didn't feel right anymore. But eventually, the woman in that room, she stood up, slow, stiff, like her joints hadn't moved in years. She turned toward the window, walked toward it. Each step took forever. She stopped right on the other side of that glass. So close I could have touched her if the window opened, but it didn't open. I checked. The frame was painted shut, had been for decades. She looked at me, right through the glass. And then she smiled. Not a nice smile. A smile like she knew something I didn't. A smile like she had been waiting for me. She raised her hand, pressed it against the glass. And I watched as her fingers, they went through, not breaking the glass, going through it, like it wasn't even there. I ran out of that house, got in my truck, drove into town and sat at the diner for 3 hours drinking coffee I couldn't taste. When I finally went back, your grandmother was home. She asked where I'd been. I asked her if she'd noticed anything strange about the hallway. She said no. I walked her down that hallway, and the window was gone. Just gone. Blank wall again, like it had never been there. I touched it. Solid. I wanted to believe I had imagined the whole thing. I wanted to believe it was exhaustion or stress or something I ate, but I knew what I saw. We lived in that house for another 3 years. I never told your grandmother what happened, and that window never came back while she was there. But sometimes, when she was visiting her sister, I'd walk that hallway at night, and I'd feel it, a cold spot, right there between the bedroom and the closet. And I'd know it was still there, just on the other side, waiting. I sold that house in 1976, moved your grandmother to the city where she wanted to be, never looked back. But every now and then, late at night, I still count the windows in my mind. And sometimes I come up with 8. That's enough for tonight. Children, some doors, some windows are better left unopened. Have you ever experienced a strange presence, supernatural encounter, or ghostly apparition? If so, you aren't alone. According to a Gallup poll, at least 1 in 3 Americans believes in some kind of paranormal activity, and of those, many think that ghosts are real. Whether you believe or not, this collection of scary ghost stories, as told by ordinary people, might convince you that there's more than meets the eye when it comes to spirits from the other world. To help provide this roundup of tales, Monsters Among Us, a podcast in which callers anonymously share their personal experiences with the supernatural. According to Hayes, he receives hundreds of spooky submissions from around the world, and of those, there are a handful that have left him unsettled. Every once in a while, somebody will call in one of those personal stories. It's that personal connection for me that really brings it home, and some of those are just terrifying. We've included some of Hayes' most memorable callers, along with a variety of other unusual happenings we think you're going to find fascinating, including tales of real-life haunted places, mysterious encounters, and other unexplained occurrences. But beware, these scary tales just might make you sleep with the lights on. Consider yourself warned. Jeff, a resident of Dayton, Ohio, was driving with his 3-year-old son, Miles, in the back seat when they passed by a modest cemetery decorated with only flowers and small plaques. It basically looks like a giant garden, Jeff explains on the podcast Monsters Among Us. According to Jeff, as they drove by, his toddler, who'd been happily singing, abruptly stopped, pointed to the cemetery, and exclaimed, "Look at all those people." Jeff turned to look, but didn't see a soul. Confused, he asked Miles what he was talking about. "All those people over there," his son replied. "There sure are a lot of grandmas." As Jeff tells it, chills ran down his spine as he asked his son what the people were doing. They're all standing there, looking down at the grass. Miles said, completely unsettled by the conversation, Jeff sped up and drove home. Later that same day, he says his young son was watching TV when he turned to Jeff and said, "You know, they weren't alive." Thinking Miles was referring to the cartoon, Jeff asked what he meant. "Those people we saw, they were all paused," his son replied. I don't know if my kid has the sixth sense. Jeff says, or if he just has a wild imagination. Henry arrives at the historic Stanley Hotel in Colorado at dusk, and after dinner wanders the empty halls taking photos, stopping at the grand staircase to snap a picture of the empty landing before heading to his room, where hours later he's suddenly struck by violent sickness, shaking in a cold sweat, feeling like something drained his energy. And when he finally scrolls through his photos on his phone, he discovers the staircase image now contains a semi-transparent figure of a man in old, fashioned clothing standing on the landing staring directly at the camera, his pale, gaunt face fixed on Henry. And as experts later examine the photo, they confirm the figure wasn't there when the photo was taken, while Henry realizes the ghost materialized by pulling energy from him, making him violently ill. And though he laughs it off saying, "I have no idea," his haunted eyes reveal he knows exactly what happened, and the staircase remains empty forever after, but anyone who photographs it might find something staring back.